Jane sat down for a moment while she processed what she had read in the letter. She had so many questions. Who else knew she was in London? How had this letter made its way into her room? Exactly how much mortal peril was she in? She didn't like the way the sender of this note had made themselves so elusive, but she also wasn't entirely sure Gabriel Stevens was trustworthy. What cause had he for gallivanting about with a dagger in his jacket pocket? What Jane needed was a confidant. She thought of all the young ladies she had met at the boarding house, and Evie seemed like the best option. From what Jane had observed of her thus far, Evie seemed filled with vim and vigor. Jane thought her the most likely not to go into hysterics just hearing about the letter. Jane was glad she had taken note of which lady stayed in which room, and it was lucky for her that Evie's was the closest. She tried to quietly knock. Evie came to the door. "Oh, Miss Moore, you look positively aghast." Jane cleared her throat. "Miss Wood, I was wondering if I might confide in you about something." "Of course, come in. Also, as you are confiding in me, please call me Evie." "Thank you, Evie. Please call me Jane." "Jane, why don't you have a seat and please have a ginger snap or two? I think you could do with a little something to lift your spirits." Jane took a seat and handed Evie the letter without any comment. She nibbled on ginger snaps while Evie read the letter. After a few minutes, Evie refolded the letter and handed it back to Jane. "Well, they have some nerve sending you this ridiculous letter. Jane, have you any idea who might have sent it to you?" "None whatsoever. I don't really know anyone in London. The very unladylike part of me almost thinks I should go." "Oh, you must. I want to meet the fiend who sent this and give him a piece of my mind." "Evie, you would go with me?" "Of course. You need a courageous companion, and I would be daft to miss out on this adventure. Plus, I know how to get to the Crystal Palace, as Mistress Vye took us there a couple weeks ago. There are some astonishing exhibits. Why don't you get dressed for going out, and we'll meet downstairs in 5 minutes." Jane didn't really know what to say. Evie seemed to be fairly competent, and she was very curious about who sent the letter. What harm could truly come to them when there would be hundreds of onlookers? "All right, Evie, I will go on this adventure with you. I'll meet you downstairs in 5 minutes." "Excellent." Jane changed into a plum-colored skirt with a white shirt-waist and some sturdy laced-up black boots. She also made sure to grab her reticule. She met Evie downstairs, and Evie led her towards the kitchen. They had to wait until the maid was in the pantry, and they snuck by her and through the back door. Jane did wonder to herself if this wasn't the first time Evie had sneaked out. Evie tracked down an omnibus, and they were to the Crystal Palace within 10 minutes. Jane paused to take in the Crystal Palace for the first time. It was the biggest building she had ever seen. She couldn't believe how it continued to go on and on with no end and was as tall as the trees. It was stunning with just how much glass there was in its structure. It was truly magnificent. "Jane, shall we proceed?" "Yes, Evie. I just had to take in this marvelous building for a moment." "It is rather impressive." They made their way towards the entrance. There was already quite a substantial crowd. Jane was astounded by the sheer variety of exhibits. There was a gallery walled with beautiful stained glass, a display of ribbons of all possible shades, a printing machine that printed the illustrated London news at an astonishing rate, a machine making cigarettes, folding pianos that could be taken on yachts, tangible ink for blind readers, several steam engines, and a couple of velocipedes. From India came a beautiful throne made of carved ivory and a Rajah's coat adorned with pearls, emeralds, and rubies. The Americans had sent a massive taxidermied eagle holding a drapery of the stars and stripes. Jane blushed when they came upon a marble statue of a Greek slave wearing a gold chain and nothing but a gold chain. The Russian display was superlative. There were vases and urns made of porcelain that were twice the height of a man, furs, and cassock armor. The item which took Jane's breath away, though, was the Daria Ainur diamond. It was a scintillating pink. The way it reflected the light that was shone on it was truly breathtaking. Jane felt almost hypnotized by it. Eventually, Evie said, "Jane, this is beautiful, but we have a fiend to meet with." They passed by the giant fountain made of pink glass on their way to the cat show. Something about seeing a clouder of cats all together made Jane and Evie laugh. The cats certainly didn't look happy to be there, especially the ones that had been put in lace collars by their owners. The kittens were the most amusing as they were getting into as much mischief as possible. They kept trying to escape and having to be herded back into the display ring. Jane and Evie watched as the judges made their way around the ring and took notes. They were so distracted by the cats that they were startled when the clock chimed 1. They had been there for nearly an hour and no sign of the anonymous letter writer. "I don't think the coward is going to show," said Evie. "I think you're right. Shall we head home?" "Yes." They exited the Crystal Palace and managed to pick up some roasted chestnuts to eat on the omnibus. Jane's mind was racing. Was she not supposed to be worried now? Would the mysterious stranger be leaving her alone? She didn't have any answers. She just wanted to go home and rest. It had been quite a taxing day emotionally. They got off the omnibus when they were close to the boarding house. They made their way to the back of the house and went in. Thankfully, the kitchen was unoccupied. They both jumped when they passed by the parlor, and Mistress Vye marched over to them yelling, "Where have you been? I had almost been about to call the police. I thought you had been kidnapped or worse. You must tell me where you've been." Jane and Evie gave a telling look to each other, and it looked like they wouldn't tell her the whole truth. "I'm sorry, Mistress Vye. I had very much wanted to see the Crystal Palace, and Evie offered to take me. It's my fault, though, insisting on going and not thinking of how we would make you worry. I'm truly sorry for any trouble I have caused." "I should hope you would be, Miss Moore. It's my responsibility as the owner of this respectable boarding house that I should keep you ladies out of scandal and safe. Gabriel Stevens waited over an hour for you and seemed quite put out that you weren't here to meet him. Now I suggest you both go straight upstairs to dress for tea, and we'll discuss if you have any outing privileges left later today." "Yes, Mistress Vye. I do apologize for the trouble. I shall be down shortly." Jane and Evie made their way upstairs. Evie gave Jane's shoulder a little shove. "Thanks a lot for that. Although it certainly was fun, wasn't it?" Jane gave her a little smile. "It was, but we didn't find anything out. What am I supposed to do now?" "Nothing some tea and biscuits can't remedy." Jane entered the bedroom and opened her trunk to grab some clothes when she remembered to put her reticule in the desk drawer. As she picked it up, though, she noticed it had an unusual weight to it. She quickly opened the reticule up and felt as if she might faint when she saw none other than the Daria Ainur diamond she had seen on display in the Crystal Palace. She quickly closed the bag and reopened it, hoping somehow it would magically disappear. Now, you must choose. Should Jane tell Miss Vye about the diamond, or should she sleep on it and make a decision in the morning?